7.3 continued. So example 2, as you know from doing the notes ahead of time, is very long. So we're going to do the first 5 in this video, and then I'll do the next 5 in a second video. So you guys can pick and choose which you want to watch, and only watch the ones that you need. So maybe before you watch the video, look through these and see if you understand the work that is being done, and just watch the ones where you need help. This is going to take some time. Have your identity sheet out with you. If you haven't got that out, pause the video, get your identity sheet. So establishing the identity, we are going to prove that the left side equals the right side, and the right side equals the left side. Before you pick a side to start with, you want to look at the one and decide, what can I do more with? And if I look at the left side here, cosecant times tangent, I could actually do more with that than I can secant. So looking at my identities, and again, you're looking at Pythagorean, reciprocal, and quotient identities today. Sometimes the even and odd identities. So let's see, I need to rewrite cosecant and tangent so that I get secant. Cosecant, I can use the reciprocal identity. Look at cosecant under your reciprocal identities, and this is 1 over sine of theta. Tangent is a quotient identity. Now I know it's also a reciprocal identity, but trust me, tangent works better here. But let's say that you did use 1 over cotangent. 1 over cotangent might not help you as much. So then you might have to say, oh, I can rewrite cotangent, and you can rewrite cotangent as cosine over sine, but now you're making too much work for yourself. So sometimes something we try might not work right away, and you might need to find a different pathway. So tangent, I also see under quotient identities that tangent is sine over cosine. And that is, these reciprocal and quotient identities, kind of need to have those memorized by now, but it's okay if you don't. Now I see that I can actually cancel my sine and my sine. So I am left with 1 over cosine of theta. This is where it will benefit you if you have your quotient and reciprocal identities memorized. This is a reciprocal identity. Sorry, that just looks weird. And I cannot spell. Reciprocal. Okay. Reciprocal identity. Look. 1 over cosine. Oh, 1 over cosine equals secant. So you need to be familiar with these identities. We always want to think, how can I rewrite? How can I rewrite? What can I do next? How can I rewrite it? So I rewrote cosecant. I rewrote tangent, and I canceled what I could. I was left with 1 over cosine. So now how can I rewrite it? Always think, what can I do next? And we always need to think ahead. Always remember, what is my goal? Here, our goal was to rewrite this as secant. And your answer, you guys, what I'm looking for when we have these on a quiz and a test, I am not looking for what is your final answer. I am looking for the work in between your beginning and the end. Please make sure you take the time to do the work. I will not give you credit at all if you just say, oh, this is secant, duh. Show the work. All right, let's move on to B. In B, we want to show the left side equals the right side. The left side is more messy. So we want to rewrite. Couple ways you can approach this. There isn't just one correct way. I'm going to leave the sign. The reason I'm going to leave sign, this is the part where you need to look ahead. Sine, stay sine. Cosecant is 1 over sine. Now I can cancel the signs. So this is 1 minus cosine squared of u. Look at your Pythagorean identities. You have a 1 minus cosine squared, which equals sine squared u, or theta, or x. That is one way to approach this. That's actually a really easy way to approach this. Here's another way, just so you see a second way. You can say, hey, I can rewrite sine. That's 1 over cosecant. Oh, I can rewrite cosecant as, sorry, I'm not going to rewrite cosecant, not this time. And then your cosecants cancel, and you're left with 1 minus cosine squared, which equals sine squared. You could also say, let me leave this the way it was from the original. So I'm going to leave sine, 1 over sine. Then you might say, oh, cosine squared. Look at your identity sheet. Cosine squared is 1 minus sine squared. I know I'm leaving off the u's. I'm sorry, you guys. Now I can do some extra work. I can cancel out my sines. I am left with 1 minus sine squared. Then I can distribute my negative. 1 minus 1 plus sine squared u. Ones cancel, and look at that. You are left with sine squared u. So you have a couple different ways that you guys can approach this. There isn't just one right method sometimes. Sometimes it's just going to depend on how you see this. You need to find the best way that works for you. All right, let's move on to C. I need to show the left side is going to equal the right side. We did one like this in yesterday's video for example 1. So I'm going to rewrite the left side. Well, let's see. It looks like they switched places, so I'm looking ahead. Cosecant plus 1 is on the bottom. Well, the only way I'm going to get a cosecant plus 1 on the bottom is to multiply both numerator and denominator by the conjugate, which is cosecant plus 1. It's the conjugate of the numerator. So cosecant minus 1, multiply it by cosecant plus 1. So the top, now this is going off of yesterday's notes, so I'm going to do stuff a little bit quicker. I'm going to multiply cosecant times cosecant and negative 1 times 1. Cosecant times cosecant is cosecant squared. Negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. Now, I want to end with cosecant plus 1 in the denominator, so I'm not going to multiply the cotangent through. So cotangent, cosecant plus 1. If I multiply the cotangent through, now I've lost my cosecant plus 1. So I want to leave it the way it is. Now look at your reciprocal identities. Pythagorean identities. I know to look at the Pythagorean identities because I see a cosecant squared minus 1. Something you need to start recognizing. Cosecant squared minus 1 actually equals cotangent squared. You will not see that if you're not looking at your Pythagorean identities. So now I still have the denominator, haven't done anything with that yet. Now if you remember from yesterday, cotangent squared can be rewritten as cotangent times cotangent. Now one of your cotangents cancel. You are left with cotangent on the top and cosecant theta plus 1 on the bottom. And that's what I needed to end with. Look, this matches this. It's what I needed to get. Now I know I have finished. Moving on to D. I want to show that the left side equals the right side. Now this one's a little bit tricky. I want to rewrite this going from sine to cosecant. Well, let's see. Look at your identities. Is there something we can use that will help us go from sine to cosecant? Well, if you look at your reciprocal identities, sine equals 1 over cosecant. Well, that actually might be helpful. So I'm going to rewrite 1 plus 1 over cosecant over 1 minus 1 over cosecant. So sine, both of the sines got replaced with 1 over cosecant. Now, anytime we are adding or subtracting fractions, we must get a common denominator. This is something we need to recognize. I can rewrite my 1 as 1 over 1. I'm going to show a lot of steps here that some of you may not need. So now I can get a common denominator. So let's work with the numerator. The numerator has a denominator of cosecant and 1. So I need to multiply this fraction by cosecant over cosecant. So I will now have cosecant plus 1 over cosecant. Cosecant times 1 plus this one right here, and your denominator is just cosecant. So now let's apply the same thing to the denominator. I'm going to multiply by cosecant to the ones. This is cosecant minus 1 over cosecant. Sorry, you guys, I thought I changed my color. Now, this is a fraction divided by a fraction. I can now take the reciprocal of the denominator, so cosecant over cosecant minus 1. Now let's look at this. I can actually cross cancel. I want you to think about what can we cross cancel. I can cross cancel my cosecants. I hope that's what you said. So my numerator is cosecant plus 1. My denominator is cosecant minus 1. And look at that. I have what I needed to end with. This really does make it a lot easier, you guys, if you remember the identities. Always think about how can I rewrite them. All right, one more for this video. So I want to rewrite the left side so it looks like the right side. You're adding two fractions. So the first thing that should be popping into your head when you add fractions is you want to get a common denominator. So I'm going to multiply the left fraction by cosine. And I'm going to multiply the right fraction by 1 plus sine. So I'm not going to multiply anything out yet. I want you guys to see the math that we're going to actually be doing. So, well, I can do cosine times cosine. Cosine times cosine is going to give me cosine squared. Then it's 1 plus sine times 1 plus sine. You can actually multiply that. That's distribution. FOIL. You're going to start by distributing the 1, and then you're going to distribute the sine. And then the denominator, so I'll do that in a minute. The denominator is my common denominator, which is cosine times 1 plus sine. I'm not going to distribute that yet. I don't know if I need to. I definitely need to distribute the the 1 plus sine. So when I go through and I do that distribution, I have the original cosine squared. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times sine is sine. Sine times 1 is sine. And sine times sine is sine squared. all over cosine times 1 plus sine. Okay, now we need to simplify some stuff here in our numerator. Look at your cosine squared and your sine squared. I really hope you guys see this. This is cosine squared plus sine squared. What is cosine squared plus sine squared? It equals 1. So those become 1. So I have 1. So that's this one right here. Actually, let me draw the arrow this way. Cosine plus sine gives us that 1. Then I have the 1 that was originally there, so plus 1. Now look at these two signs. Sine plus sine. Sine plus sine is 2 sine. My denominator, cosine of u times 1 plus sine of u. Okay, now what am I trying to end with? I'm trying to end with 2 secant. So let's see here. I now have 2. 1 plus 1 is 2, plus 2 sine of u over cosine of u 1 plus sine of u. Oh, look at this. They both share a 2, which means we can factor out a 2. When I take a 2 away from here, 2 divided by 2 is 1. And when I take the 2 away from the sine, I'm just left with sine. All over cosine u 1 plus sine u. You should be getting excited about now, because now I can cancel the 1 plus sine of u, and I'm left with 2 over cosine. But we need to remember, we're supposed to end with 2 secant of u. So how would we get 2 secant of u? Well, let's think about this. What is secant? Secant is 1 over cosine. Well, we have 2 over cosine, and guess what 2 over cosine is? 2 secant of u. So we finished with what we needed to finish. There was a lot of work for this one, but I showed everything. There is some mental math that you guys can do here. When you guys are multiplying and you're seeing things and you're like, oh, wait a second, cosine squared plus sine squared is 1. You can rewrite that. Or you automatically see sine plus sine. Put 2 sine. Make this easier for you. You guys can use some mental math. If you know that this gives the cosine squared plus sine squared gives you 1 and 1 plus 1 is 2, you automatically could have written 2. Use mental math. These don't need to be as long as I am showing them. I am showing you every single step. But some of you need that. Some of you need to show every step, and it is okay. I want the process to be correct, you guys. I don't want you making a mistake somewhere, and then at the end you're just going to put, oh, see, look, I get 2 secant u, but your work does not give you 2 secant u. Do the proper work. All right, so that wraps up A through E. We'll finish this up in class tomorrow. Please come with questions. We will be having a homework question day coming up soon before we take our quiz. Please be doing your practice problems, please. And if you need F through J, I think it's F through J, that will be in the next video. See you in class tomorrow.